Hi everyone, and welcome back to English for You. I'm Pat.
And I'm Mike.
And we're talking today about similes. Yesterday we learned that a simile is a technique that makes your writing more creative, more interesting, and as we'll learn today, has some quite useful functions.
That's right, and it kind of makes things more interesting, you know? Instead of saying, I've been really busy today, you could compare two similar things. I've been as busy as a bee. Instead of saying, I ran quickly to catch the bus, you might say, I ran like the wind to catch the bus. You're using as or like in these comparisons, you know, to make your writing more interesting and to kind of catch the reader's attention a little bit better.
Yeah, what we did learn is you have to compare two things that are pretty similar. There are other writing techniques which allow you to compare two things that are very not or dissimilar. And we will look today about how a sort of a funny simile could compare two very strange things.
Okay.
Something we'll get into. But generally, for a good simile, the two things should be pretty similar. You're not as quiet as a lion. You are as quiet as a mouse.
That's right. We also talked about how you're a writer, of course, not only here for the magazine, but also in your free time. You like to write. Do you use a lot of similes? Would you use busy as a bee or run like the wind, or would you try to come up with your own ways of comparing? And is that easy or hard? Because there's a lot of famous similes.
Yeah, it's a good question, and one we will touch on towards the end of this article in terms of things to avoid. I certainly would try not to use a really obvious, busy as a bee, quiet as a mouse, unless it was something a character who would think like that would say.
Oh, I see.
You know, if you make a character talk in those kind of, we'll mention this word later, cliches, then that tells you something about that character.
Right.
But if I'm going to do it, I would try and be a little more creative with it. And I like to mix it with other techniques as well, like personification, where you give a non-human thing human qualities. So if you say the mist flowed around the boat, its fingers like claws gripping the sides of the vessel, then you are using a simile there, but you're also saying that this kind of fog is like a person acting in a particular way. And so it's building up the images.
Interesting. So lots to think about there and lots to learn about and read about today in our article. So let's get to it.
Reading.
Similes spice up your writing. Similes make it easier to explain something. They also add depth to your writing. Take love, for example. It's hard to describe love, but a simile can convey your feelings in a few words. For example, Scottish poet Robert Burns wrote, "Oh, my love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune." Other writers use similes in order to create humor. American writer Raymond Chandler described a woman as being as easy to spot as a kangaroo in a dinner jacket. This is a funny image for readers and also describes the character in a creative way. However, don't use too many similes. This messes up their overall effect and makes the writing hard to read. Another thing to watch out for is cliches. These similes are so well known that writers who use them seem to lack imagination. Take the time to create an original simile that truly describes your subject, and most of all, have fun writing.
All right, so we've learned that similes are really useful when you're comparing things and also when you're making your writing more interesting. They make those comparisons in the writing stand out and seem more interesting to the reader. As we begin today, it says similes make it easier to explain something. That's another thing a good simile can do. Instead of using a whole paragraph, 5-6 sentences, and 40 words to describe or explain something, you can use a good simile. The reader will read it and go, I know exactly what you mean.
They also add depth to your writing. Now here, depth, we kind of mean a sort of extra layers of meaning that if you read the sentence and you think about what is the writer saying, you'll realize they're saying several different things at once. And a simile can do that if it's a really good simile, basically. It allows you to go, okay, it means this, but also this. And also this as well. So therefore, one sentence can do an awful lot of jobs. And this is especially useful when you're kind of dealing with, I guess, not, emotions, feelings.
Right. Yep.
Things that are hard to really explain. We understand them, but they're a little difficult to actually describe.
Absolutely. And some of those feelings, because they are deep, they can be understood in different ways at different times of your life, right? I mean, the love for your parents, the love for your boyfriend and girlfriend, your love of chocolate. These are all different types of love. So using these clever ways of describing it can make it easier to understand. And let's look at that emotion. It says, take love, for example. Many songs, poems, plays, books, stories have been written about love in all sorts of ways.
But, as the article says, it's hard to describe love. I mean, writers have spent centuries trying to describe love. And the article says, but a simile can convey your feelings in a few words. To convey means to communicate something, to share a feeling, to share an idea so someone can understand it. Like Mike was saying, you could do this in a big, long paragraph, and maybe at the end of that, the reader goes, okay, I get it. But a short, good simile can do this in a way that you go, okay, I immediately get what you're saying. You've conveyed the meaning and your thoughts perfectly.
That's right. For example, and we're going to look at an example in a second. For example, Scottish poet Robert Burns wrote, and we'll get to that, his famous quote or line about love. But yes, Robert Burns, Robbie Burns, was a poet, one who writes poetry. Yes, poetry or poems is a special type of writing. Sometimes the words will rhyme. It's kind of more like the words of a song. If you take the words of the song without the music, that might read like a poem, and these are kind of using words using the words to describe something in a very sort of interesting and artistic kind of way. Poems are often shorter, but they'll have a lot of emotional meaning in them. So if you're writing poems, you would be described as a poet, one who writes poetry. Here's our example sentence. John Keats and Percy Bysshe Shelley are two of the English Romantic poets, writing in the sort of early 1800s. These great romantic poets about love, but also about nature and life and all sorts of interesting stuff.
Okay, so we're going to get into a line of poetry that Robert Burns wrote about love. He says, "Oh, my love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune."
Ooh, lovely.
And he says, basically, love is like the melody. There is our simile. Love is like the melody, a specific kind of melody, as we'll see, not just any melody. But what is a melody? It's a song. It's a tune, or it's kind of part of a song that you would easily recognize and that would sort of stand out, that you'd understand as being, this is a bit of the song. Something like that. You might know many famous classical melodies because they've been used in, films and commercials, and you hear them all the time on the radio, that kind of thing. So you might say, oh, I know that melody. Is that by Mozart? Something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The part that you might sing, or the part you might whistle, or the part that gets stuck in your head from that pop song you keep hearing. That's probably the melody that you're thinking of, and not other parts of the music. And if something is played in tune, this basically means the musical instruments, or the singer and the musical instrument that they're singing along to, they're singing the correct notes, or notes that sound good together. When you hear some music and it kind of makes your back go, oh, like that, and it sounds like, fingernails scratching across a board, that's out of tune. It's not in tune. So there's something in our brain, this mysterious thing that, your brain hears the music and the different notes and the different people singing or playing together, and you go, that's nice. I like that. That sounds like it should sound. If it's in tune, that's the way it will sound. It will sound nice to your ear and your brain.
I'm going to point out that Mike just used a simile. He said said badly played music is like fingers scraped down a chalkboard.
Yeah.
Indeed. So that's a good simile. And so this simile is saying, or Robert Burns is basically saying the love that he feels is like when there's a song that's being sweetly played in tune. The music, the words, the voice, everything's working together. That kind of perfect playing of music is for him like love at this particular time and place.
Right.
It could change later. So that is one use of a simile, to explain a complicated feeling like love with a great image that anyone should be able to go, yeah, I get it. I can see how love is like a perfectly played song. So let's move on to another example. We see other writers use similes in order to create humor. So humor is something that's funny. It's funny because it's kind of very silly. It's funny just because it hits that part in us that we look at and laugh. Somebody slips on a banana skin and falls over. That is a type of humor. Somebody makes a clever joke with words. That is a type of humor. There are all kinds of different types of humor, but it's something that we laugh at. It's something that amuses us in one way or the other. We might say to someone, you can laugh, but I don't see the humor in this situation. It's not funny to me at all.
All right, so let's look at a simile that uses some humor or creates some humor when we're doing a comparison or a description. American writer Raymond Chandler described a woman as being as easy to spot as a kangaroo in a dinner jacket. Okay.
Yep, love that one.
Kind of unusual, kind of funny, but it's also telling you that this woman was easy to spot or easy to see. He compared it to a kangaroo wearing a nice jacket. You would definitely see a kangaroo in a nice jacket, so you would definitely see this lady.
Even thinking about a kangaroo in a suit jacket does make me kind of laugh and smile.
It also makes me want to know, what did this lady look like? So it definitely stands out because he's talking about how it's so easy to spot this lady, like spotting a kangaroo in a dinner jacket. When you spot something, this verb means basically you see something, maybe something that's a little bit hard to see. It might be kind of hidden, or maybe there's lots of other things around it that might attract your attention. But, if you're looking for your friend and you're in a busy place, you're like, where are they? Where are they? I'm waiting for them. They're 5 minutes. Oh, there they are. And out of all the faces that you see at the train station or wherever, that big crowd of people, you see your friend. You spot your friend. So they could be hidden. They could be lost, but you pick them out with your eyes. You see them in kind of a difficult environment or situation. For example, can you spot the two monkeys in that tree? Oh. Big tree, lots of leaves, two monkeys. They're not moving, but maybe you see a little bit of brown in all of that green. That could be the two monkeys.
Okay. So Chandler, have you read all of his?
I've read a fair number.
Quite a few of his stories.
He's really good with these interesting descriptions.
Yeah, he sort of did these similes as they're often very long and quite silly and generally make you stop and laugh. Right. And they add humor. They tell you something about the actual character who's telling the story.
Yes.
They say something about the detective. It's a detective story. And as the article says, this is a funny image for readers and also describes the character in a creative way. So we're saying this woman, whoever she is, she stands out. Maybe height, beauty, bright clothes, something about her makes her easy to notice. But by describing her as like a kangaroo in a dinner jacket, it's really making the point that, yes, she's very easy to spot and we can imagine this and we kind of laugh at it. So there are several different ways that this simile works and makes our reading experience more interesting.
Absolutely. So using similes in a clever way like Raymond Chandler is definitely something that you could try to do. However, here's a warning. However, don't use too many similes. Don't use similes all the time because, it's maybe a case of a little goes a long way and too much will quickly become too much.
Right. The article explains this, so using too many similes messes up their overall effect and makes the writing hard to read. So, yeah, if every sentence has got 2 or 3 similes, or if every sentence in a paragraph has got a different simile, then you'll kind of read, and by the end of it, you'll be like, I'm confused. What was this paragraph about?
Right.
What are we talking about? You know, I've kind of forgotten the first one. Maybe the first one was a great simile, but there's been 2 more, so none of it has left any effect on me.
That's right.
The whole thing has been messed up.
The teacher was as wise as an owl, as stubborn as a mule, and he moved across the classroom like the wind running, or, you know.
Yeah,
he ran across the classroom like the wind. Hang on, that's too much.
This guy's a bit of everything.
Yeah.
And it's messed up your overall effect of what you're doing. To mess up means to spoil something, to ruin it, to take something that was going well and then make it go badly. If you're taking a test and you mess up, that means you've got a bunch of the answers wrong, and from a good grade, you end up with a bad grade. Maybe you didn't read the instructions or something like that.
That's right. And using too many similes could mess up the overall effect of your writing. And overall basically is everything when you look at everything as a group. Okay, you're not looking at one thing or 2 things or 3 things. You're looking at 100% at all of it overall.
Okay, so that's one piece of advice. Don't just throw simile after simile after simile into your writing. And as the article continues, another thing to watch out for is cliches. So watch out for means be careful about something. If say you were trying to cross a river by walking through it, someone might say, watch out for sharp rocks. Be careful about them. Pay attention and make sure you don't step on any. Or watch out for the fast current. You know, the river water moves quickly. You might get swept away. You might fall over in it. So be careful about that. Anytime you're needing to pay attention to something to make sure you're not affected in a negative way, you need to watch out for it.
That's right. So watch out for cliches. And cliches are phrases, opinions, maybe even situations that you might see in life, or more likely in stories and things like that. That are overused, that are not original, or were original, but like 25, 30, 40, 100 years ago, and they're not original anymore. It's like you're copying everyone, all right? So, you know, kind of think of the movie, and then at the end, there's the hero and the girlfriend, and she's like, you're my hero, and he's standing there, and he beat the bad guy, and everyone's like, wow, you're so great. You're like, oh, this is so cliche. This is like all the movies that have ever been made. It just seems really unoriginal. It seems like they're just copying, and they're not trying to come up with anything new or clever or surprising or anything like that. Comparing your love to a red, red rose. All right.
Yeah. Oh, I've got an idea. There's going to be a bomb, but the good guys will cut the right wire with just 2 seconds left on the clock.
2 seconds. I thought it was 2 seconds.
Yeah, that's a cliche. Yeah. It's happened in so many movies and TV shows. You know the bomb isn't going off, but you know they're not going to solve it with like 5 minutes left to go. They're not going to have time to make a cup of tea afterwards.
No.
It'll be the last second.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about similes, we mean by cliches, these similes are so well known that writers who use them seem to lack imagination. And to be fair, some of those animal ones, wise as an owl, busy as a bee, quiet as a mouse, these are similes, and they're ones that are good for explaining what a simile is, but they're not really that clever or new or interesting to have in a piece of writing. They don't seem to have a lot of imagination. Your imagination is your ability to imagine, to think up new things, to create pictures in your mind, to basically have things in your head that you don't see in front of you. If someone's describing a picture and you can kind of see what that picture will look like, you're using your imagination. And this is very important for writers, as our example sentence says. A good imagination is necessary if you want to be a successful science fiction writer. It's true for any writer.
Yeah.
But science fiction, where you're imagining a world of the future with a technology that doesn't exist right now, yeah, you need imagination to think, how is that going to work? How is that going to change the world?
Absolutely. So the article gives us some advice. Take the time to create an original simile that truly describes your subject. And most of all, have fun writing. Absolutely. You might have to go back to that writing days or weeks afterwards and go, I don't quite like that. I can come up with something better, something more original. I feel like that's too much of a cliche, but that's okay. Often writers feel like their writing is never really done. Even after the book is finished, they want to go back and change a few things. So take some time to do it and try to be as original as you can. Original basically means new, fresh, exciting, something that hasn't been done, something that is one of a kind. Cliché, we saw that as a noun. Cliched, just with a D on the end, is the adjective. That's a cliched ending. The opposite would be original. Wow, I've never seen that before. I thought it was going to go like this, but no, it went like that. I was surprised. That was very original. For example, the artist is famous for the original sculptures she makes out of glass. Wow, sculptures. I might think that's a stone or metal or wood, but making a sculpture out of glass, that's quite original.
And we end the article with the phrase, most of all, have fun writing. Most of all is a phrase used to communicate the most important thing to know or remember about an overall point, what we're trying to say. If you kind of forget a few things from this article, no worries, you can look it up. Just remember, most of all, here's your important message to take away with you. Have fun writing. Enjoy the process, because if you don't, then you'll never really come up with anything that good. Having fun with it, that's how you get the good stuff. All right, well, that brings us to the end of our article. Let's now go to our For You chat question.
You chat.
Okay, we'll start our chat question with a quote. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
That's one from Forrest Gump, right?
Indeed.
Tom Hanks said that.
A pretty famous simile and a pretty accurate one.
Yeah. So he's comparing life, which is full of surprises, to a box of chocolates. You know, one of those boxes, and one of them's like a mint one, and one of them's got peanuts in it, and one of them's strawberry flavored, but you don't know unless you read the little guide.
Right, yeah.
But you don't know what the chocolate will be. And if you're like me and you don't really like mint chocolate, you get, I don't really like this
Never mind. But can you think of any other famous similes?
Well, one I always thought was interesting, I don't know if I've ever used it, but one I always thought was interesting when I heard it as a kid was, it's as easy as shooting fish in a barrel. And I always thought, what? I mean, yes, if you have a barrel, that's a small container of water, and you put fish in it, and you have a gun, and you're shooting the fish in the barrel, that would be like shooting fish in a bathtub or something. The fish can't go anywhere. Of course, you're going to hit them. But then I always thought, well, who is shooting fish in a barrel? And then aren't you going to make holes in the barrel and have the water? You know, it works as a simile, but then you actually think about it, and you're like, why would you do that? But anyways, it is easy. It's definitely as easy as shooting fish in a barrel, because shooting fish in the ocean would be really hard.
Okay. There's a Bon Jovi song that goes, your love is like bad medicine. Right? That's Bon Jovi.
That's true.
Like bad medicine. So maybe it's like it's medicine, so it's kind of doing me good, but it's not very fun to take, or it's something I've been given and I have to take, but I don't like it. So,
but then doesn't he say bad medicine is what I need?
Yeah. So maybe he's really describing his love there. It's actually not a bad simile at all.
Right. Interesting.
So you mentioned another. Love is like a red, red rose.
Oh, that's a famous one.
Yeah. Or Shakespeare is one of his famous sonnets. Doesn't use an exact simile, but shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
Oh, okay.
I mean, that comparison is pretty famous. Those are all kind of pretty famous kind of similes, and we've got a few more in our article, and you can just find some online if you check them out. But that's all the time we've got for today. Thanks for listening, everyone. For English for You, I'm Pat.
I'm Mike.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Vocabulary Review.
Poet. Edgar Allan Poe was an American poet and story writer who often wrote poems about death. Melody. This song is popular with young children because the melody is easy to sing. Humor. Bob doesn't have much of a sense of humor. He's very serious. Spot. Joe tried to hide while we played the game, but I spotted him under the desk. Imagination. Young children often use their imaginations to make stories when they play with toys and dolls. Original. George wrote a story in class that he thought was original, but it was actually the same as his classmates.
智慧小补帖
Convey. Overall. Cliché.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作。活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net